Welcome. Today, we're talking about bedside care as end of life doulas. There's a lot of fear and anxiety and stress about the suffering while someone's dying. And so we've had conversations already about what to expect. What does active dying look like? But today, what we want to talk about is what does it actually look like to vigil as a death doula? And if you're finding yourself in this position, what do you actually do? How do you know what to do? And so today's topic, we're going to work with the ideas and the inspiration and our own experience about those dying. And this is good information for families who are finding themselves in a situation where they're anticipating this happening, or maybe you are in the presence of someone who's dying and you're wanting some wisdom today, or if you're in a situation where you're wanting to plan for the future and what you want in the end. So with end of life bed care, what does that look like, Maureen, when you think about vigiling at end of life?
Gosh, there's so much that goes into it, Kathleen. I think that you had started to talk about the vigil planning, and I think we can be thrown into end of life care at the bedside without any plan. But if we can take that time to plan beforehand and create that vigil plan, it just makes it so much different. I mean, there's so many things to consider. Um, I think one of the things I want to get across is to set up your support. Set up your support, that 24-hour support, whether you hire a doula or you make a assignment of family members who can
Yep.
step in and that they know what to do. And that's why having that plan is so important. But it's so different at each bedside. And depending on what planning's been done, how the families are familiar with what their loved one might want or not want. Let's just take music. Music is a big thing at the end of life. And trying to prepare for that. Would you want loud rock and roll, or would you want soothing harp music? Or there's so many different things. When I talked about it with my 20-something sons, I said, hey, if you could make the decision for yourself, what would you want? And all of them said that, well, two of them said that as much as they like country music, they would not want country music played. And so that was good to know, because I know that two of them like country music. They like all different kinds, but I might have been playing country music. They might have been saying, what the heck? I don't want that played. So little conversations like that are so important. So that's just one aspect, but the more that you can plan, and I think getting back to having that schedule of caregivers is so important, because that shares with everyone. It lets everyone be involved, but it starts with the person that's dying, who they want and who they don't want, because sometimes there's people they don't want. Have you experienced that?
So it's so interesting. I appreciate what you're saying. The music, just for instance, when my dad was dying, we put on his favorite music. So the two artists were Neil Diamond and John Denver. And what was happening to us when we went in the room was it was like ripping a scab off. It would be just like, here's dad. And we have all these memories of singing in the car together or going skiing together, or him, dancing up and down, singing the song. And after 2 days of being there, I decided I'm switching the music, and I switched it to classical music.
Yeah.
And every family member who was like, oh. So the other thing we have to think about is, how do you do self-care next to the person who's dying? And what it did was it helped all our nervous systems. It helped our stress, and it was relaxing. It was good, relaxing music, which I know my dad also appreciated.
Well, yeah, I think that the relaxing music, it's like if you go into meditation or like a spa like setting, they don't play loud music or even any kind of rock and roll or anything like that. They play that soothing classical music. It just sort of takes the stress level down, don't you think?
Yeah. And we have a colleague who's also part of our Gentle Passage Death Doula Collective, who plays the harp. And she plays the harp and stays very in tune with how the person who's dying responds to it. And sometimes musicians who do this will do contrasting music to see how the person responds. And it's just a beautiful, again, attuned way to plan and have some support in the end. But I love getting back to the basics of planning care. And that includes if you're the only person who's doing care for someone who is dying, which we hear these stories all the time, and it inspires us to be death doulas and be able to come in and help with vigiling. But if you find yourself in that position, is to go ahead and put yourself on a schedule that you get to relax, that you make sure that you eat, you nourish yourself, you step outside, you take care of yourself, because then you can be more present. It's just like parenting or anything that we do, is if we're taking care of our physiology and our bodies and our mental health, and we're picking up the phone and talking to people so that we can get support. But many people are finding themselves alone. So be sure and do that self-care and call in the support and ask around for support in the neighborhood, in your church communities, as well as soliciting a death doula or the hospice services.
I think that's one thing that people don't realize, how much people want to help and they don't know how. So if you ask for help, that's the greatest gift you can give to others too, those that want to help and don't know how. So asking, like you just said, is so powerful. I think when it comes to planning, creating that atmosphere, like we were talking about earlier with just the music, but also with the lighting, the candles, that's something that death doulas help families achieve. They make that plan for, really going in deep with either the person before they get to the active dying process, or once they are, with what kind of atmosphere do you think your loved one would have wanted? Let's create that for them. Let's not have harsh bright lights unless he loved to be in the sun or she loved to be in the sun. Like I've told my sons and my husband, I want my hospital bed if I'm at home and dying right by the window with all the sun shining in on me. But at the time that I'm dying, I might not actually want that. So to help them set up a peaceful, quiet environment that would be conducive to the person dying and their wants
Yeah.
and needs.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the cornerstones in my death doula training was to surround yourself with beauty. So whatever
Mhm.
that might look like, and mementos that were meaningful. And so maybe family pictures, having pets around, letting fresh air in, or being under a really warm blanket, and really taking the cues and trusting yourself. This is one thing that if someone's grimacing, if you notice a look on their face, if you're so in tune and this person well, if it's a loved one, is just changing things up, but having it smell beautiful. Candles naturally make us feel relaxed. Touching the person and seeing how they respond. One of the things that I loved doing was rubbing my dad's feet, and he would make sounds even though he wasn't verbally communicating anymore, but just kind of like, oh, And I remember when my uncle was not coherent, my dad went in and brushed his teeth, and he too made this sound like, oh, just this moaning sound, like, this feels so good. And then I think one thing that Maureen, you and I were just talking about, is making sure that you're comfortable bedside. So you're setting yourself up either in the bed to be holding the person, or you're setting yourself up next to the person, or you're reading, or you're listening to music, and you're taking care of yourself, but that you're in a comfortable position so that you can be attentive, but also be taking care of your body.
That is so important, because when you're bending over a bedside for hours at end, your back hurts. It's like when someone asked me when my first child was 2 months old, "Do you have the 2-month backache yet?" And I thought, yes, I do, from carrying this, 10-pound object around that I wasn't used to. But the same is, like you said, when we are at the bedside and we're either hunched over the bed trying to help them. That's why it's so good to get at their level. And I loved what you said about crawling in bed with them and holding them. That is so powerful. at
Mhm.
the end of life, and to give permission to people to do that, because not everyone, especially if someone dies in a hospital,
Yeah,
not everyone feels comfortable with that, but it's okay. The hospitals accept that and encourage it too. So there's so many different things that you can plan on, and you can ask, would you like me to get in bed with you and hold
yeah.
you? Or would you like, in the planning before they get to that phase? What if you're unresponsive? Would you still want me to hold you? Would you want me to touch you? Or what signs should I look for if I'm touching you and you don't want me to? There's all these different things that we can do to
Mhm.
help plan and prepare. But I love the idea of the smells, and, essential oils, rubbing them with essential oils is so powerful.
Yeah, and again for you, what smells
Yes.
you like? You can rub yourself with essential oils. You can be burning, incense. You can be burning
Mhm.
candles. You can be burning essential oils or have I want to say humidifier, but what is the
Oh,
word
the
I'm thinking?
diffusers.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the diffusers of essential oil.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just creates such a soothing and peaceful atmosphere.
Mhm. And I
The
think
other
it's one of the things that people dying gets insecure about, or it's one of those things that people hesitate about is the smells that they might encounter when someone's sick or someone's dying. So it can also really help. Another thing is that's really common, Maureen, is keeping the person clean. There's a desire to be acceptable all the way to the end, and that they want to be clean. They don't want to not be clean. So that's the other thing to attend to and make sure you get help and support with cleaning someone.
Yes,
Yeah.
and keeping them, because we all like to be feeling fresh
Yeah.
and good. And I know when I was just hospitalized, I was shocked because I kept asking, "Can you bring me something for a bath?" And they never did. Finally, they gave me these cloths, but I thought, that is really important, personal hygiene right up till the end, because we are still here physically. As we're talking about the atmosphere, I think another important thing to think about is who you want there.
Mhm.
Family, friends, caregiver, and make sure you take time. And it's okay to tell people no, that it's not
Yeah.
the right time for
Yes.
them to be there.
Yeah.
And that especially it's time if it's active dying and you're down to, days or hours, and you want it just to be your family, immediate family, even, that's okay to say, thank you. We'll let him know or her know that you're here. I keep saying him because my personal experience has been the death of my dad. So, but we'll let them know you're here, because sometimes it can be very agitating to have too much stimuli. And especially if there's a lot of people at the end of life that I know want to come and see someone who's dying to pay their final
Yeah.
respects, but it just might not be the appropriate time.
Yeah, and I think if you're the caregiver and people are coming, that is a really good time when thoughts come to your mind about what would be helpful, getting groceries, doing some laundry, doing some weeding outside now that it's springtime, anything that would be one of the most beautiful requests that I had as a hospice that I heard about. It wasn't me, but as a hospice volunteer, was a family requested that when the volunteer came in, that they would make pie for the family to eat and any guests, so that the house would smell like pie. There would be something nice for everyone to eat, and that it created this atmosphere again of something that is more comforting. So
Mhm.
be thinking about, that's a great opportunity. I want to come, I want to pay my respects, is to also then have them pay their respects to you and get the support as the bedside caregiver or doula there. Yeah.
And people don't know how to ask for help. So just show up with something.
Yes.
Show up with a little tray of cookies, or come and offer to change the water in the flowers, or water their houseplants, or like you said, weed their yard. There was a great article I read that a woman who had lost, this is about death, though they'd already died, lost a baby, and her house was overrun with flowers. So one day a friend showed up and just said, "I'm here to change the water." And she just changed the water in the flowers, and that meant so much to that woman because she was so overwhelmed. And sometimes when you're caring at the bedside for someone, you're so overwhelmed that you don't know what to do or what to ask for. So if you're listening to this, you're not a caregiver, you're not a doula, just show up. As
Mhm,
Yvonne
mhm,
Heath, uh, that she's one of my mentors, she just says, just show up. And that's
mhm,
all you can do. Uh, I love talking about the atmosphere, but there's so many other things like the legacy part
mhm,
of
mhm.
doulaing. That part of the Vigil plan that doulas help create is the legacy elements, the storytelling, the leaving items behind, and just gifting memorable items. There's so many different things. Kathleen, have you had experience with this?
Yeah, it's actually one of the signs that someone knows that they're dying or they're preparing themselves to die is, and we talk about doing this way in advance in case we get caught off guard in an accident, something acute happens, is that meaningful things go to the people that you want them to go to, like jewelry or anything, any memorabilia besides money and your estate. So I think it's important to open this up as an opportunity. And one of the things that we are trained to do is actually document while we're with the family members and with the person who is dying, what actually has happened, what is happening, what is going on around you, and what you're noticing, and how things are changing over time. But one of the things that can be really beautiful is to encourage people to have those conversations about why they were meaningful to you, um, how they inspired you, memories, storytelling, and potentially saying, I still, I have the necklace on. I'm going to wear it in honor of you. I also think going through picture books can help you with memories because we can get overwhelmed and kind of stuck in what's happening now with our own anxiety as caregivers. Am I doing everything I'm supposed to be doing? And I think those kinds of ways of connecting can be really, really helpful. And even if the person is not responsive, we just want to say, keep talking. Know that they can hear everything that you're saying, and that we know this because people have tears come out of their eyes, their breathing can change, the responses on their face can change. And so saying meaningful things in the end is really, really important. And I think the other thing is when you're trying to, what you were talking about is have a gatekeeper who's going to make sure that there's not too many visitors, that it's not too tiresome and overwhelming, even for you as a caregiver, that
Mhm.
you don't feel like you have to entertain, that you don't feel like you have to have people coming at you, is to have a guest book or have wishes or have a place for people to drop things off so that you don't have to even be physically interacting with people. What about you?
Oh, yeah, I think that's so great. I love the storytelling. That's my favorite.
Mhm.
As someone, whether they're alert to engage in the storytelling or those that are at the bedside, telling stories about time spent together. I think as when I worked with hospice and we did life review, with a hospice nurse that was part of what we were trained in is to help with life review. But it means so much to people to know that they mattered and that finding that purpose, that their life had purpose and meaning. And that's why sitting at the bedside and telling stories, whether they can hear, as you just said, they can hear even if they're not responsive. I've seen that over and over again in the patients I took care of. And to share those stories and send them on their way to the next part of their journey, where whatever your beliefs are, that their life had meaning and that they touched lives and that they mattered. It's so
Mhm.
important.
So important. And another thing, bedside, that you can do, which we've been asked to do, I certainly have been asked to do this both as a doula and as a hospice volunteer, is to read scripture, read poetry, read prayers, read letters. So I think all of those things can be really helpful. And again, it's really important to know who you're taking care of, but definitely as a care provider, caregiver, if it's your spouse, your parent, or if you're a doula, what did they enjoy? What do they normally read? I remember one person, I used to read the sports page because she read the sports page every week. So going in on Sundays when I'd volunteer is I would read her the sports page from one end to the other, and just feeling like, again, it tracks time and it's familiar and you can see when it's connecting. And I just noticed like there would be a shift in the body and the eyes and everything when I would read what was going on with the sports.
I love that. I love that. We think that it has to be something so meaningful, but when someone loves sports, that's their
Yeah.
meaning right till the end. They want to know, and that keeps them engaged in some way. I just love that. And like the prayers, depending on your spirituality, it could be religious prayer, it could just be spiritual
Mhm.
saying,
Yep.
anything like that. I think poetry is another good thing that we can
Yeah.
do. I know my husband used to love poetry and love to write poetry. He hasn't written to me in a while, any poems, but that might be something to consider with him. And I think that the other thing that I really want to stress is it's okay to cry in front of
Oh
the
yeah.
person dying. It's okay to show your emotions.
Mhm.
It's okay to let them know that you're going to be sad and that you're going to miss them, because let's face it, you are, and they're going to miss you too. I mean, but but it's another way of connecting and showing that their life had meaning, because to bring someone to tears it's powerful, but it's okay to cry at the
Mhm.
bedside.
Mhm. And I think it's also okay to say those things like, it's okay to let go. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be fine when you go, when you die, and that can offer some relief for you if you get the sense that there might be some holding on. And we've talked about those stories of people holding on to see people who are coming to visit, or they are holding on until they can attend a wedding or a birth or a graduation or something important to try to hit those numbers, those days and time, and then they're able to let go. So it's amazing. There's all kinds of theories and beliefs around you have some control over when you die, and that may be what's happening. And I also think that when your bedside is to trust yourself to read the person, and so if you start out with poetry like your husband and it doesn't seem like it's landing well, or if it's stressful for you, just try something else and
Right.
just try to hit that rhythm and that pattern so that it feels connecting and it feels like something that is working as a vigil, some of the last things that are said and done by the bedside.
Yeah, and to watch them. Um,
Yeah.
they might love poetry, but they might get agitated while you're reading poetry to them. So it's totally okay to switch gears and read them a mystery novel or
Yeah.
something, whatever you find. And you get the feeling of this by looking at their facial expressions, by their
Mhm.
body. If they're tense and clenching their hands, or they're showing stress in their face, then know that you might not be on the right track. And it's okay to just sit silently, to
Mhm.
just sit in silence.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love is listening to people who, share their wisdom with uh, being with people on the bedside, and matching their breath can be
Mhm.
really helpful. Um, and also noticing if there's any grimacing and just trying to adjust their body a little bit, and letting them know that you're attending to them, that you're seeing them, that you're noticing them, that you're there, and that you care. And I think one of the biggest fears is being in pain and being alone. And so what we want to do is reassure the person, and I think always orienting them to who you are and what you're doing, or just do it and see what their response is, and just speak to or be in presence with what you think might be most responsive to them. So grimacing, noticing if they're too hot, too cold, if they're laboring in their breath. And sometimes it's just really helpful. I've done this a number of times, matching the breath, and it can be really, really helpful and peaceful.
The other thing that I think can be peaceful to you, even if someone's not alert, is guided imagery. We used to do that
Mm,
a lot in one of the units I worked in the hospital. When someone was dying, we would do
mm,
guided imagery for them, and seeing people just relax with that, sometimes it's powerful. So people can just Google guided imagery
yeah,
for the dying, and there's so many things we can find now. But having a doula at the bedside, they can do that. And I think the only other thing I really want to touch on before we wrap up, because once again, our time is just going by so fast,
yeah,
is that not every death is peaceful. Not every relationship is peaceful. And you can't get to the point where you are sitting peacefully with your loved one that you've had a conflicted relationship with. And, that's where forgiveness comes in. And it should start well before you get there. But we do work with forgiveness, and Kathleen Frank Olaszewski, is that his name? He
mm.
has, and then Ira Byock is another one, the four things that are most important, and it all has to do with forgiveness. So would you share that with us?
Yeah. So the things that are important to say in the end, what people say in the end when they're dying is they want to know that they loved well and that they were loved. And so I love you. And thank you for loving me. And so gratitude. And also forgive me. And I forgive you. And I said thank you. And
And
goodbye.
saying goodbye, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes that forgiveness, people forget to ask for forgiveness or get forgiveness because they're caught up in the moment. And it's okay to ask for forgiveness and give forgiveness at the bedside of someone
Mhm.
that is actively dying. It's even okay to do it after they die, because it's important to get to that state of forgiveness. Um, Gosh, there's still so much to talk about. So I think I would love to share what I thought were the takeaways, is
Yeah.
really creating where an atmosphere that's peaceful and comforting for not just, mostly the main priority is the person dying, but everyone that will be caring for them, so that everyone feels a sense of peace and tranquility during this very difficult, challenging time. And legacy, sharing those stories, sharing pictures, talking about um, what you want to leave, what mementos, what gifts you want to give to someone that you're leaving behind. And then the prayers and spirituality, bringing that into it
Mhm.
is so important.
I agree. And making that space really this sanctuary for this person, that it feels safe, comforting. So when you actually go into the space, that you're honoring that space and you're bringing an attitude of compassion and love and connection. And again, forgiveness and gratitude and those stories. And then also, Frank talks about thinking of it as you're entering a threshold
Mhm.
of a whole different world, someone else's world, right? And so making sure and honoring that, because the conversations that maybe need to happen with logistics or something can happen away, since they can, since when we're dying we can still hear. So just being focused and then getting that support that you need.
Yeah, getting support for yourself. There's caregiver support groups online.
Mm.
And let's wrap it up by talking about death doulas, end of life doulas. When you work with an end of life doula, they can help walk you through this whole journey from early on,
Yeah.
where it's just, we talked about that last week. It's a lot of education and preparing you when your loved one is still well enough to be involved, um, all the way through to what to do in that active dying stage. And that's where that vigil plan that you can create with an end of life doula, or by yourself, comes in so handy to know what you're doing. And then lastly, after death.
Right.
We'll address that probably in another show,
Right.
but after death, the doula still works with you after death. So there's so much that a doula can help with that I don't think people realize, and they make the journey so much easier. So We're so glad you're here with us. Kathleen, share how people can reach us.
Yeah, please join us on our Facebook group, Challenging Conversations. And also you can reach all of us. Maureen, who's at Radiant Morning, helps people with conversations to limit the opportunity for fractured families, making end-of-life choices and planning, getting your affairs in order. And we're all at Gentle Passage Doula Collective, so you can find Colleen and me and Maureen there. And then I'm at KathleenPutnam.net, and you can find me there.
So thanks so much. And we look forward to seeing you all next week when we talk about patient advocacy. And we'll have one of our doulas on sharing information about how to have a doula as a patient advocate. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.